This recording was originally a live conversation which took place at Start Garden back in June 2022.
If you build an app or a product, people will buy before they actually have the product, before they open the app. That's the part where you lose most people. And that's the part where actually founders are focusing too late on it. They only focus on the acquisition once the product is built.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Herbert, you're a sailor, a deep tech entrepreneur, investor, and also a published researcher. So there's plenty of stuff that we could talk about. I think we could fill much more than just 1 hour. But I quickly want to focus on the sailing part, to start with the personal background. Why did you actually embark on a 4-year-long boat trip with your family a few years back?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So actually, it was always a dream of mine since I can think. So really started in kindergarten. Like my first moment I could think, I was wanting to traveling around the world with a sailing boat. And then I did all these licenses and stuff and everything. And at the end of my studies, there was just basically the boat missing. I mean, at the end of my PhD, I was missing the boat and time. So I thought, okay, boat and time, that costs a lot of money. So either I do a banking career or I become an entrepreneur. So I decided to become an entrepreneur to actually finance the whole trip. So that's the honest answer.
And yeah, you've actually successfully built Coaba, for example, and also Shortcut. Currently, we see it in the background. You're the co-founder at Earkick. So you've built multiple companies. If we just focus on these three, Coaba, Shortcut, and currently Earkick, what have each of these ventures taught you if there's one thing to pick?
One thing, I actually picked 4 things.
Okay.
So first of all, it's not in a particular order, but I was thinking of what to say here. And the first, I would say, ignore the naysayers. Any idea that is disruptive or new or innovative, then there will be a lot of people telling you that it will not work. Mm-hmm. So don't just ignore them and continue building and listen to the people who like it, to your customers, and that's it. Then build something unique. That's a bit the problem here in Switzerland, because we also, I mean, it's a good opportunity to become a copycat of something that exists in the US or elsewhere and doesn't exist here yet. But even then, try to make it look at least unique and have some kind of uniqueness on it. Then the third one is the focus on value generation from the start. So I'm just telling this not because I did it from the start, but because I didn't do it from the start multiple times. So these are a lot of lessons I've learned and which I did wrong in the beginning. I mean, as a creative or entrepreneur, you've got tons of ideas. So a lot of them are just nice to have, and maybe a few of them are really value generation, rather value generating. So pick the most value generating ones. Yeah. Then that's always the biggest mistake I did, and that's the biggest learning. And always, it needs a lot of discipline not to step in the same trap again. Don't scale too early. This is always the thing I have to say. I mean, at some point you think, okay, now we're there, but you're not. Actually, you're not. And then it's burning a lot of money and resources to go back then at square one. Also, is not that easy.
Yeah, wow, really good learnings. Thank you for sharing them so openly. And if you look at your startups, you've actually built all sorts of products, from image recognition platforms to receipt managers, photo book apps, mental health trackers. Has there been any common methodology to develop all these creations?
I would love to say yes, of course. I was organized since the beginning. I had all this methodology. No, actually not. It was evolutionary. It was more an evolution. It started with trial and error at Kuaba. There was none of these books that exist today. The whole startup infrastructure was populated by very old-fashioned Swiss entrepreneurs, which lived in the last century, to be not offensive, but so it was really chaotic almost. So we had just to do trial and error and see what works and what doesn't work. And now, of course, it's different. I do have a method that I can also recommend to anyone, but I'm going to talk about this later.
Okay. When we're going to talk through the different stages, I guess.
Yes.
So yeah, let's actually start with that, with the product iteration process. So first, you usually start with the ideation stage, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see founders making at this very, very early stage?
Yeah, again, it's not only that I see others doing this, but I also did the same mistakes, some of them. The first of all is that's really a lot of times I see that. And once I think you know why or why not to do it, then you see much clearer. And that's actually to focus on the problem, not the solution. So this is basically the most important thing in the ideation stage. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of solutions, a lot of cool stuff we can do with technology and so on. But at the end, you end up with technology looking for a problem. So the most important thing is to really understand what's the user's or customer's problem, and from there come up with ideas to solve them. So having said that, the next mistake is very related to the first one. It's not having a clear goal or focus in mind. So it's like brainstorming is fun, right? But it needs to have a clear goal and a clear objective. Then often ideas are very complex, so that's good to come up with them. But at the end, it boils down to a very simple approach. Otherwise, users or customers get confused. So keep the ideas coming, but at the end of the ideation process, vote for the simplest ones.
I love that one, because in the end, if you want to win clients or investors or employees, they have to get it right very often.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's hard to make business.
Yeah, exactly. My personal problem is that I have too many ideas. So I need to consciously hold back. And still I get complaints from my coworkers that I have too many ideas, and I'm not even sharing them, or not like I don't even share 10% of them. So still it's I need to be very disciplined by not sharing too many ideas also in the team, because then they think, oh, what's going on now? Do we change our direction? And I don't know, it's just an idea. So yeah.
And I also wonder, I have a few follow-up questions on the points that you just mentioned. Let's start with these ideas and having too many ideas. How do you prioritize what you should work on and what not? Like, do you have any specific, maybe not methodology, but just like framework or tips for people who also suffer the same pain of having too many ideas in too little time?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So just to make clear that we're talking about the very first step, the ideation step. There's no MVP, there's nothing yet. So what I actually tried this time with Airkick was to validate the ideas first before we start working on any of them, and not by ourselves, but by customers. So what we did was we were creating a couple of ads, and then we checked out which idea got the highest conversion rates.
Mm-hmm.
And then we boiled it down to the you can segment the target audience in age, location, and everything, and sex and so on. Before we kept it really open to anyone, and then we chose the one that had the highest traction and boiled down to the real target audience that had the highest conversion rate. So you get two birds with one stone. You get the most appealing message, the most appealing idea, plus the right target group, the right target audience for this.
Cool.
And it's interesting. And I mean that the most, if you build an app or a product, people will buy before they actually have the product, before they open the app. That's the part where you lose most people. And that's the part where actually founders are focusing too late on it. They only focus on the acquisition once the product is built. But if you turn it around and you focus first on the acquisition, you have a much easier play.
Yeah. And I guess that is only possible if you did the first part that you mentioned, the focus on the problem in the right way. Do you have an example how you focused on the problem and not the solution, also validated this?
Well, I mean, all the ideas were focusing on the problem, then we just validated it on the market. Because the messaging is different for every idea you come up with. And messaging is also very important, how you communicate it, what words you choose. It's very important. So everything is focused on the problem, basically.
Perfect.
But you still don't know which one they choose, right? In order to get from A to B, there's a lot of possibilities. You can have a Tesla, but you also can have a skateboard or a bike, and depends on what actually is most wanted by your target audience.
Yeah, but these tests that you mentioned before with the ads, etc., to validate that, they give you at least a first indication. Once you've validated this and have the first ideas, which ideas you should pursue, then you usually build an MVP, right? So what are some misconceptions that you see regarding MVPs?
MVP cannot be simple enough. Before I was more into like at the times of Coaba, we went into waterfall and made the whole thing before we actually went out to the market to validate it. But I mean, not too much, as I'm exaggerating a bit. But nowadays I actually go out with something much simpler, like a message or a short video or a clickable prototype or something. So to validate, that's already MVP. If users can click through it, or even you make a video and people like it and pre-order or subscribe, then you get already some validation for that.
And what role does the value that you deliver to the user play in that MVP stage? Is that something that you also focus on, or is it more focus on the pre-order, etc., that you did in the past?
I mean, if you then start building something, when we build something, we focus on the value, of course. But before, I mean, people react to things that are valuable for them already before you actually create value. And
got it.
You see what they actually want.
And then going from MVP to a finished product, which is of course in tech probably never finished, but an ongoing development, so to speak. How do you then manage that transition, and what role does user feedback play here? I mean, before you focus on pre-orders and likes, like some of data that shows you that you're working on the right thing, but then to actually deliver a finished product, what role does the user feedback play there?
Well, user feedback is crucial. And the most important moment is actually to see the user using your product. And that's actually at the moment very difficult for us because we have no idea who our users are. Earkick is fully anonymous. We don't have email addresses. We don't have names. We don't have ages. We even are addressing a public that is that has anxiety. So the most often the most frequent form of anxiety is social anxiety. So that makes it really difficult to talk with our users, because we don't have any means to get in contact with them, and if we have, they don't want to talk with us, because they're afraid of so that makes it really, really difficult. But still we get some users that help us and give us feedback. So the user feedback is absolutely crucial, but I'm coming into this very soon, because it depends who is that user that is giving you feedback, and how is the user using your product. There's a lot of feedback from people you show your product to, and they say, but I would do this different or that different, or why don't you do this in red instead of blue? But actually they don't use your product. They just saw it the first time, and they give you feedback, and then you go back and do it. But actually then that's exactly the contrary what your real users want. So, and we go into this
right now
later.
because I wonder, how do you actually derive insights from users? There are multiple things that you can do, right? So you don't know your user, you don't have any email addresses or anything, so how do you derive insights from your users?
So we follow a concept that was introduced, I don't know how many years ago, but first by Sean Ellis, and then it was refined by Rahul Vora from Superhuman, and it's called the product market fit score. And this is a process where you ask people, or your users or customers, one very important question, and more, of course. But the one question is, how would you feel if you could no longer use EarKick or your product? And then they can choose between not disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or very disappointed. And basically, if you get 40% of your users or more, 40% or more answering very disappointed, then you reach product market fit. That's what Sean Ellis said, and actually we can confirm. And we're right at the 40% right now. But the thing is now what you ask afterwards. So we ask them, why do you use our product? So what do you love most on our product? Then they say something. And the next question is, what are you missing? So what could we build? The last question is, who would you think is the product for? So they will describe themselves in that question. And now it's important, it's probably getting complicated. Try to keep it easy. So the last question defines what is the target audience. So for us, for example, it's students, young professionals between 13 and 30 years old. So now we need to segment the first group that clicks on, or that answers that they would not be disappointed. Just ignore them. It doesn't matter.
Not a good fit.
That's not a fit. It's either the wrong target audience or something else. Then you can already improve your product by just filtering the right target audience. So you go and look into the very disappointed ones. Who are they? And you just keep the ones that are like in the same target audience from the somewhat disappointed. And that already improves product market fit by just targeting the right target audience. Next, you take the answers to the question, why do you like our product? So what's the best thing you like most on our product? And you look only at the very disappointed ones. And that's why they actually use your product. So you need to double down on that, not to lose them to competition. For example, for us, they answer tracking anxiety, getting insight about the emotional states. So we want to double down on that and give even more insight and create even better experience to track mental health. Then the next question, what would you like to have? You don't care about the very disappointed one, but the somewhat disappointed ones. So they're missing something that you don't have yet. You want to convert them into very disappointed.
Yeah.
So we build the things they want and release it to make them become very disappointed if they could no longer use our product.
Exactly.
And that's why I mentioned before, it really depends who is giving feedback. And this currently controls all our product development process. So we have a sliding window because the older ones, they don't count anymore. We already implemented things that they were asking. And so we have a sliding window of a couple of weeks in the past, and we're analyzing what's coming in new. Basically, the main advantage that they have from our product doesn't really change that much, but the new things that the things that are missing, we implement them, we prioritize them, we implement them, and then we basically contact them to tell them, hey, we implemented that. They can leave an email address, they don't have to.
Yeah.
And it's not connected to their user account, so we still don't know who they are in our app.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful hands-on example, because I think most of us have heard about this test, but what you just described is really the execution part, how then all these different questions play together and what you can do with that feedback and that data. I think it's a fantastic example. So that was like sort of a questionnaire that you built in your product, right? That's how you do it, I assume, because you don't have the email addresses of your people.
Yeah, it's in the product. And we also wait for some criteria. If we ask too early, then people don't even have the chance to look at the product. So they have to use it a couple of times before we ask them the question. And so this actually also removed all the and saves us a lot of budget, I must say, because we don't do user testing anymore.
Yeah.
Because user testing is you pay people to use your product, and then of course you can fix some UX issues. For this, it's good, but to really gain insight about your product and what's missing and how the user is using it, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
You save a lot of money if you don't do that. And
Absolutely.
we stop doing it. First of all, you pay them, so they want to be nice. They get paid by you, and so they give nice feedback.
Of course.
And then they're not users who are really using your product.
Yeah.
They just saw it first time, and it's good to optimize onboarding experience. It's good to optimize UX and buttons and whatever. But otherwise, don't do it.
It's not going to move the big needle, so to speak, because the organic users, that's the valuable content that you want to have, the valuable feedback.
Yeah.
Now you have this questionnaire. Is that the most important source of user insights for you at the moment? Or do you also do anything on top, like your own interviews with your users, or you focus on some data points in your application? What else do you do besides that?
So a lot. So the most important is really talking to users. We talk to users whenever this is possible, and we don't give up. Like if we're gonna answer until they don't write back anymore, or book phone calls and go really deep into how they use the product, what they don't like, what they like, and the most difficult is actually people who no more use the product. But we got some great users who actually wrote us why they stop using EarKick. So that gives us a lot of insight to improve the app. But a lot of talking to users, understanding the problem, understanding what else they need. But again, for us, it's really difficult because we don't have this, of course, touch points, or we do have them, but not that much as anyone with email addresses.
How do you then have to imagine this? How do you ask your users for feedback? Do they have to have a specific usage pattern, or when does the message to leave feedback for you get triggered?
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly, but I think after 7 days, when they used it at least seven days, then we ask for feedback, because then they know about the product a bit. It's still early, but they already know. Raul Vora from Superhuman, they ask after 2 weeks, for example. I think that's too long. I think that's too long because you want to reach product market fit as early as possible as a startup company. So, I mean, having users using your product 2 weeks already, then they're basically converted, right? You don't need to ask them a question. They're probably addict already.
Ideally, yeah.
Ideally.
And did you build all of that yourself, or do you use any tools to conduct these surveys, or also the prompts and everything? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we use Typeform for that, and we use Google Sheets, and I mean it produces a graphic automatically that is linked to a sheet in the board presentation. So It's all automatic. At the day we need to prepare the board meeting, it's done in a couple of refresh clicks on the graphs, and they refresh automatically. Then we also do some word clouds. There's a couple of word cloud generator. So we just copy paste the feedback from, we first segment into very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, they're not disappointed, we don't care. And we grab their feedback and put it in a word cloud. And then you can see, the answer shouts at you what you need to improve.
Great. I love that one. That's also great. The hands-on advice. I wonder, do you also use anything on top to really, gather the product data, like something like Mixpanel, for example, or anything for product analytics?
Yeah, we use Mixpanel, but that's more to see how the users are using the app. For example, what goals they're setting, what sessions they're most using, so we can prioritize. That's to get an understanding about the user.
But this is basically then a different level, right? There you want to understand how the people use the product. And with the questionnaire before, you more focus on the value on the higher level of what problem you're actually solving and what value you're giving to the people.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, I also have a bit of a provocative question, before we then also open for Q&A from the team here. Some people say that users don't really know what they actually want. So you heavily rely on user feedback. Other people say the users don't really know what they want. So you have to make the decisions. You have to build and shape the product. So which one is true?
Both. But it depends how you hear it. They're both true. So the users, they don't know what they really want, but they know what they don't want. And that's what we need to listen to. We need to listen more to the problem. Again, we need to understand their problems. And that's really difficult sometimes. So it's always the question, why, until they come up with, actually, it sucks, right? When they have a problem, for example, one user feedback was that it was difficult to create multiple symptoms. So we have that screen where you can select what symptoms you're having, and the user said, it's difficult to add multiple symptoms. So we need to dig into that problem. What exactly was the problem, and really understand why exactly was that. Which part of the user interface was problematic at that stage. And then we could find a solution, but only then. But the user didn't have the solution, of course. They're not made for having ideas. They're not made for coming up with things. Sometimes they do come up with ideas, but then it's probably not the best ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you would say it's more about understanding, getting feedback about the problems, but then you as an entrepreneur, you make the decisions what to build and how to actually solve these problems.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summary, basically?
Yeah.
Great. So guys, I also want to open for questions. So Noah and Max, if you want to ask Herbert anything, please feel free to do so. We still have a few minutes left for some interactive Q&A parts.
Yeah, thanks. That was really cool. We know Rahul well. He's currently testing Typevoice. He wants to include it in Superhuman, actually, the text prediction part.
Cool.
So we should ask him maybe a bit of advice on product market fit. He keeps on telling us don't try to sell it to enterprises, just try to sell APIs directly to software companies. But yeah, let's see. No, thanks. I mean, for us, the challenge is also, it's always, I don't know what, I wouldn't say easy, but it's easier in my experience, at least, if you just have like B2C users, you know, like they just like, it's easy for them to test your product and adopt it. For us, it's always difficult because it's a B2B solution, which requires company data as an input, because we are training AI models with company data to build company-specific AI language models. So for us, it's always, you first need to convince like decision makers to a pilot. And then once you got them convinced, you still need to run through a data process, right? Data privacy process and all this stuff. And then you can start testing. And then you often have to, we are working with customer service agents mainly. They are not the most tech savvy people anyways, you know, so it's always a bit difficult to gather the feedback or get their feedback at all. But I really liked it, and I already forwarded actually to our CTO and our growth manager to say, have a look if we can maybe use Rahul's method to learn more from our current users. But did you have experience like with this like challenge to first get through like a Chinese wall of decision makers before you actually get to your actual users in a B2B setting?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you have a sales pipeline, then you basically get already the feedback actually at the different stages. The good thing, I mean, now we can complain towards what's worse, D2C or B2B.
Grass is always greener on the other side.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I think it's much easier for B2B because you can just pick up the phone, call them, and go for lunch or sit on the table and talk to them directly and understanding their problems much better. On the other side, yeah. It is difficult because you don't have the mass of answers like with the direct to consumer is you get much more feedback in quantity, but the quality is much less. So sometimes we need to understand what they meant with what they wrote, and we need to go back, and then they don't respond. And I mean, it's really difficult to really understand what they want to have as a new feature. Whereas B2B, you can basically analyze and sit together and talk about that and really come up with some requirements for that. But then you don't know whether they are the ones. So what we had with Kuava, sometimes we built what they wanted, but then they didn't buy.
Huge effort, no result, right?
Yeah, and that really sucks. So yeah. I think you probably are facing the same issues, right? And you're building it, and they don't want it anymore. So it's really difficult. I don't have a magic answer.
I think that I think the users, the service teams, they obviously love it. You know, it makes their life easier. But I mean, you know how it is in enterprises, right? Like when purchasing sees like an invoice for an annual licensing deal of, I don't know, like 200K or something, like as much as users love it and it might help them, they won't listen to them, and they won't trust the KPIs of efficiency improvements and whatever. And they just say, no, that's too expensive. We don't have budget this year or whatever, you know? So it's, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Noah, did you also have a question? Oh, sorry. Yes.
No, I was just thinking, how are you B2 big B or B2 small b?
B2 multiple Bs. No, I mean, no. It's a fair question. We at the moment it's tending more towards the bigger B. just because like as how we are designing and building or actually testing the technology at the moment, we need a certain size of company that has a certain size of customer service team that makes sense, right? But we are also discussing and are aware that we need a more like a self-service downgraded version for the smaller B, right? At the lower prices that might have not as many features and is easy, it facilitates the needs of smaller service teams, right? But as of now, like if somebody says, yes, we want to do a pilot, we have 3 customer service people, then we say, well, you don't have enough data to train an AI model. That doesn't really make sense for us, right? Yeah, so at the moment more towards bigger B, but we are aware and working on a small medium business sales cycle and product offering as well going forward.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Noah, you also have a question, I think.
Yeah, it was around, you put a lot of emphasis on making sure you fully understand the problem. Do you ever feel like in any of the companies you've built that you ever fully understood it? You got to the 100% of understanding of a problem, or is it a continuous learning process?
Very good question. Yeah, very good question. So it's always difficult to say. I mean, you understand. I think when users are paying and you get really good user feedback, probably same for customers, and that then probably the Net Promoter Score is something to measure that, whether you understood the problem correctly. So if they're so much fan of yours that first of all, the product market fit rate or score is very high, and the Net Promoter Score is very high, then you can be sure that you pretty much hit or solve the problem. But I mean, 100% sure, you don't know. Maybe you're in a local maxima or a local in a local solution, and the global solution would look even different. But once the competitor comes with a better solution, then you know that you were in a local maxima. But it's really difficult to understand the problem 100%. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I don't know, you from your experience, what you would say.
I think I'm probably biased because I'm coming from the background of I am my own customer, but I've been aware of the problem. Building this because I had a massive problem and there wasn't something there. So I'm not claiming that I know the solution. I'm sorry, I'm not claiming that I fully understand the problem, but I am very close to the problem. And I'm sure it probably takes many different forms for different customers, I guess.
Yeah. Then also the problem changes when you grow, because you address another target audience and then they have different problems, and you need to find the intersection of basically the whole target audience, or you build a second product or additional features.
And no, I also think like the start that you said, you solve your own problem. I think that's actually a perfect starting point, because you have deep knowledge, and it's also probably the best motivation to pull through the difficult times. And like many people that we had on our podcast, they actually did exactly that. They saw a problem that they experienced themselves and then built the business around that. I think that's the perfect starting point.
Well, hopefully you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no guarantee that it will work, but it's a good starting point.
Yeah. Anything to de-risk it.
Exactly.
I had one. Well, I guess it's a dual-pronged question. One is I guess more of a personal question on your own reasons for it. But I saw that you've built companies in different sectors, like completely, completely, entirely unconnected sectors. What attracts you to a sector, and actually on the flip side is how do you then become an expert within it?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. It's always my personal interest, and that I see somewhere a problem that, in those sectors. And so it's not 100% sure. I mean, the first company was, we had a solution or technology and we're looking for a problem. So that was the first one. The second one was basically we understood the problem. That was fine. Then the third, but was pivoted into the cooking. So we pivoted until we got into the cooking and recipes with Shortcut. Then the captural one was for there was basically the problem was given by the customers of iFolor, because there was a spin-off company of iFolor, and the customers of iFolor wanted to have very low effort photo books. So that was something we already that was a given. But then we had, of course, to change the focus or I had to change focus on photo books and understand the market really and the needs with customer interviews. And now the ear kick is something that I'm personally into since a very long time, because I had friends experiencing burnouts and having mental health issues. I really think there must be a way to scale this and detect it before actually it happens. So then I was working at Magic Leap and was doing actually the user sensing part for the AR glasses. And there we actually de-risked the locked already there, that technologically a lot is possible. And so now I'm into that, but missing a lot of knowledge still of the domain. But for this we have experts, professors at universities, and so that are helping us. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It sort of made me ask one more though, if that's all right, if we've got time.
Sure, yeah.
I want to ask, obviously they're different spaces. How do you approach building a team in each of those? Do you approach them differently? You know, the makeup of the team in terms of capabilities. Is it still aligned with focus on the problem and scale second, which I sort of took as one of the main takeaways from your 4 points? Or is it, we're just going to build this depending on the sector that we're in? And maybe one's more customer focused and you have to build that rather than tech.
Yeah, it's a bit both. So I've heard a good sentence about what startups are. So we're building the plane while flying, right? So having said this, I think there is always, before we even focus much on the problem and the details and so on, there is a vision each of us has, like a vision, imagining a world like this and that. So for me, the vision was to have a world where a machine would know myself better than me that I do, because I have all these things, right? I can only focus on one parameter, but a machine can take into account my sleep, my exercise, the weather, the S&P 500, the news sentiment, the moon phases. I cannot keep track of all of this. So I need someone to help me to understand myself better than I do, because I know that sometimes, so with these fitness trackers, that was an eye-opening moment, because it predicted already before I got sick or got a cold or something. So I have elevated resting heart rate, which tells me that in 2-3 days, I'm going to be sick or having a running nose. That's what happened all the time. Or then sometimes I feel like tired and I look on the watch and I see that my body battery was really low. That was like last week like this. Now I just recovered, still having a bit of a cold. But the same actually is for mental health. We don't know what makes us feel bad sometimes, because it's a lot of things. It can be that I didn't sleep enough the last couple of days, or it can be that I didn't exercise. I didn't go for. I don't move I don't move enough, or it might be the weather. I don't know what influences me. And once I know myself better, and I can unlock my full potential. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Okay.
It does.
I also have
Yeah.
a question. I mean, I'm myself a big sailor and sailing fan. And maybe two questions. One, which boat did you buy to sail around the world? Because I'm also planning to do it. So it's always good to get some input. And second, what did that, like? I understood it's a 4-year break basically to sail around the world. Like, what impact did that have on you as an entrepreneur and for your ideas? Maybe I can imagine like 4 years on the boat, like going around, seeing different places, like having to fight the nature basically, or tame the nature. Is such a great experience that it maybe gives you a totally different perspective to life and to the world out there. So curious to hear what that impact was on your entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, the boat was a Bavaria Lagoon 41. It's from 89.
Okay, they're still very solid, the old Bavarias. Huh?
They're very solid. Yeah, they were. That was one of the major points, to have a boat that is really safe. Mm-hmm. And those old boats, they're still very safe because they didn't know exactly how thick the hull should be. So they just put another layer and another layer and another layer. So it was really thick. And our hull was like 2 centimeters thick. You don't find that anymore. Now it's more true. 5 millimeters or something. And so that was it. And then also it should be a boat that I can still sail. A lot of boats nowadays, they're made for charter. Mm-hmm. So that's a really big living area, but to sail, they're very uncomfortable. Either they're very wet or just making a lot of noise. So that's why I decided for an older boat. Then about the inside, I mean, I was working the whole time.
Okay.
I remember on the Atlantic crossing, I was coding, and I had my alarm that rang every 15 minutes when I had to go up and check if someone was there. But then the night shifts, I was coding, and the eye-opening was like more that when we live in the bubble of Europe and the US, or Western Europe and the US, and even Switzerland is even a bigger bubble, we don't see the real problems of the world. And what was interesting was that internet actually was not the biggest problem. A lot of places, even very remote places, had internet. But the problem is the electricity. Sometimes just the island was without electricity because it's gone, right? Then internet is gone. And so these problems are still not solved, or the water supplies, just very basic problems we don't even think of, are not solved everywhere on this planet. Yeah. And in the US, even the washing machines, right? That is more a joke.
Hey, thank you all for these great questions, and especially to you, Herbert, for joining us today. I want to be respectful of all your time. So I think it's good if we stop it here, but feel free to connect to each other if you want to continue the conversation. And yeah, thank you again so much for joining today. All the best.
Thanks. You so much, Herbert.
Thanks, Silvan.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.